congratulate you on your advanced certification by the Grief Recovery Institute. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. How
You're
are you
so,
today?
I'm doing good. I'm so glad that you're here. How's things going?
Really good. Really good. And thank you for your congratulations. It was really exciting to get my advanced certification.
Tell us a little bit about it.
So the advanced certification with the grief recovery method means that I'm now certified to offer all of the grief recovery method online.
Okay.
So there's no more geographic parameters. I can serve grievers all over the country and all over the world. And those of you who live in the Bay Area know what Bay Area traffic is like. So sometimes it's also very beneficial to have in the Bay Area too.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations once again. Share your grief story with us so we'll know a little bit more about you.
Yeah. So my grief story really started about 12 years ago when I found out that my father had terminal brain cancer, a glioblastoma multiforme, which back then really was rare and not as there wasn't much about it then. And that really started me down a path where I felt very lost and isolated and confused. And, I asked him to promise me not to die, which he couldn't make that promise, but he promised me he wouldn't die on my birthday. And he kept that promise because he died the day after my 24th birthday. And his last words were happy birthday. And I just remember, I was so lost. And I promised myself that when I got to a place that I could, heal and just get myself out of the grief maze that I was in, I would devote everything I could to helping other people, walking alongside their journey with them and helping them through their grief.
Oh, that is so amazing. I'm sorry about your loss, but you are so far from, like you said, that emotional ball. And I'm so proud of where what you've accomplished and just having the willpower to be able to do that. That's, I think that's very important to want, like you said, you already knew that there would come a time and you just went through that process, feeling everything. And then, but in your mind, as you stated, that you were expecting a date to be able to, do something differently. Besides,
And it took a long time. At first, I started off by, I went to my favorite nonprofit and I asked them if I could create a memorial fund in honor of my dad. And after some convincing, they said yes. And I created a fund that some of the proceeds go to helping women and girls in India. And to date, I've raised over $92,000. And thank you. And I ran the New York City Marathon in his honor and to fundraise. And at first, that was what I could do to channel my grief, was by fundraising to help women and girls in India. I couldn't actually work with grieving people yet because it was just, it was just too raw and too hard. So it took many, many years to get there. And back then, grief was even less socially acceptable to talk about.
Absolutely.
And resources were, there are very few resources back then. There weren't all these Facebook groups and, incredible books that are out there. Mm-hmm. So it actually, my journey was it happened really fortuitously because I was, about almost 10 years had gone by and I really wanted to figure out ways to get more involved with the grieving community. And I was scrolling through LinkedIn one day and I saw that someone was a grief recovery specialist. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? Because I didn't have the language. I didn't even know what to begin looking for. And so I said, I must meet this person. And so I found a mutual friend who connected us and she told me about the Grief Recovery Institute. And it just so happened they were having a training on my dad's 10-year anniversary in the building. But get this part, in the building that was adjacent to the building I worked in. So I don't think there could have been any more signs that
absolutely
it's your time, Ilana. Yes. And it was on the eve of my wedding, which I was really, really struggling because all these emotions came up about my dad and how he wasn't going to be there. And so it was a gift for me to find the Grief Recovery Institute. And it was, it's such a gift that I'm so grateful to be able to share now with others.
Absolutely. It's just you were in alignment with it. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
to be like you said, right there at your job and on, you know, during the anniversary, it was all in alignment for you.
Yeah.
But oh God, it's just so amazing. How did the stages I'm sorry, let me ask you this. What is setting intentions and how important was that during your journey?
Grief is very nonlinear,
Mm,
and grief is tough. It's very tough because there's no roadmap, and every person grieves differently. Um, me personally, losing my dad at 24 really shattered my world upside down. I had never lost anyone before,
mm-hmm.
and it really was the first funeral I had been to. 6 months later, I lost my grandfather, and then a few years later, I lost my grandma. But my dad was the first loss I had, and I was very, very close to him. So it was, remembering that how I felt in the early days and remembering that promise that I made myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it's hard to do for yourself, but it's
Yeah,
sometimes easier to do for others.
absolutely.
And so just remembering that there are other people out there that
Mm-hmm.
were really hurting
Mm-hmm.
and really had felt they had nowhere to go. That's really what kept me going. And also, knowing I was going to get married and not
Yeah.
wanting to bring all of this into my marriage, and like knowing that I wanted to learn how to deal better with
Yeah.
my own grief and have tools to serve my own grief.
Mm-hmm.
And so really it and I remind myself that every day now, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I'm doing this to really help and support other grievers.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, honestly, it helps me too. Because to
So
be,
how I'm sorry, excuse me, but how even in that period of you setting intentions and knowing that you wanted to do something, how did the stages of you going and processing the grief, how did that play out in the journey at the same time? Because we're in this, it's like an out of body experience. You just don't know what you want. You don't know how people can assist you, but yet you still have this urge deep inside of you of wanting to do something. To first, well, I can speak for myself. At first, I was seeking, of course, help for myself, but then there was this urge for me to do more to help somebody else. So going through those stages, can you talk to me about the stages that you went through, or just the 5 stages of grief period?
so there's actually a lot of kind of discussion around whether these 5 stages even exist.
Yeah.
And I personally am of the thought, and also the Grief Recovery Institute as well, that there are no stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
You will feel a lot of emotions, and you can feel all
Yeah.
of these emotions in the matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody grieves and processes differently.
Absolutely.
Everybody goes through different emotions. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think the stages can be a little bit dangerous sometimes because
Mm.
people can expect to feel in a certain way and then, or think that they're going to feel that way. And then it doesn't, it might be comforting sometimes to have some structure
Yeah,
to a
that's what it
process,
is.
to something that's so unstructured, but
Yeah.
not everyone's going to feel all those emotions. And
Right.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is, the one who's talked about the stages, but it
Mm-hmm.
was a lot in part due to more when someone
Was
is in a
dying.
terminal illness.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Not so
Mm-hmm.
much to someone who is learning to live with a loss.
Yeah.
So, like, and I think another thing that's also really important for grieving people to know is that there really is no roadmap, and
Yeah.
every person's relationship is so unique, and everyone's grief is so unique, and
Yeah.
no two people, even with the same grieving the same relationship,
Yeah.
won't
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
won't grieve the
Yeah.
same way. I can speak for even the way my two brothers and my two brothers and I and my mom all grieved my dad. We
Mm-hmm.
all grieved our dad very, very differently.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I went out and started a memorial fund because that was how I could channel my grief, and I trained for a marathon.
Right.
My little brother decided to go to med school.
Mm-hmm.
My older brother, started a family, and my mom moved to California. So we all processed it very differently,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not right or wrong.
Right.
You
And
know,
I think the stages of grief are it's stated just, were there as a roadmap, like you said, for individuals that were dying, and I guess maybe in that their family structure, for them just to have a structure. I in my grief process, I was able to just, how I was led to that was through my training and just understanding that there was something. For me, it was just understanding that there was something to even expose me to a different emotion that I may be feeling. For me, that's what it was. It wasn't so much, like you said, structured, or that there's no, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, because we can agree to disagree. You know what I'm saying? You could say, no, there's no structure. And I can say, yes, there is for me, because like you just said, we process differently. And for me, since I'm a visual learner, I have to see those things and be able to understand that maybe this is why I'm feeling this way. So, it's like you said, everybody has their own journey and they may not feel them, but I'm glad that we can talk, since there's so much, like you said, around that and the negativity around it, or just the disbelief if that is happening. It's just good to have a safe place to even just mention it, that we both have, different opinions about it, but I still love you.
Likewise. And you know what? We're both right.
Yeah.
Because it's our truth. And that's the thing about grief, is your journey and your process. And, it's a non-linear journey. And what you need to heal, what I need to heal, and what someone else needs to heal, they're all correct.
Yeah.
There's no wrong way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
Sorry. One other thing I did want to bring up, though, is, there are a lot of emotions that come with grieving.
Yes.
So, I do want to say that, like, even if we don't call them stages, whatever we will call them, there is sadness, there is anger, there can be denial, there can be guilt, although the G word is very dangerous, because sometimes guilt is misused, because guilt really means like that there was really harm intended. Sometimes it's relief and guilt can be kind of interchange, and sometimes there's relief. There's so many emotions, and they're all okay, and they're all real, and they're all true to the person that's grieving.
Absolutely. And they're okay. And just like you said, if people would just allow themselves to feel it, don't run away from the feeling. If it's there, just acknowledge that it's there and understand that this is just how I'm feeling today, but tomorrow is a better day. I can do something different. And I love this quote that you had on your Instagram today. And even when we don't know where a person is, the best ways to support your grieving loved one is to be a heart with ears and simply listen. I thought that was so, it felt so good just when I read it. It just made me feel, warm inside, like, oh, that was just such a relief to be able to hear somebody saying that I'm just here to listen.
Because I think a question I get asked a lot, and I can guess that you probably get asked a lot too, is, how do I support someone that's grieving? And really it's one of the biggest gifts you could possibly give anyone is to be there, to listen, to not fix, to not analyze, to not judge. And the grief recovery method is the one who coined the heart with ears. So I want to make sure to credit them. And I love that term so much. And I use it because really to visualize just being a heart with ears, just holding that space and, letting someone feel what they're feeling and not say, oh no, you should go do this, or one of the comments that I hear a lot is, you should go to the gym. Yes, going to the gym is great. The endorphins are great. But sometimes you just need to cry, and you need to be heard and witnessed in all of your pain.
Yeah.
It's so healing.
You've talked a lot about the grief recovery method. Explain that to us.
I have. The grief recovery method has just been life-changing for me and for thousands of people. And so a little background, it was founded, I think, about 30 years ago, and has created because there was not a lot of good information about grief, and there wasn't a lot of good action recovery steps that a grieving person could take to complete their feelings and their emotions tied to their pain and complete the relationship. So it's not to say you will ever forget your loved one. It's not to say you'll ever stop missing them, because, that's not, it's not going to happen. You'll always miss your loved one, but to really able to process the pain and work through the pain, anything left unsaid, any apologies left unsaid, and any other significant emotional statements left unsaid. And so the grief recovery method is an action-based program, evidence-based actually as well, that really helps educate grievers and give them the steps to work through their grief and process their grief in an action way.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such, whoever created that just was amazing. I mean, I just.
Yeah. I don't know if you can read it. It's Russell Friedman
Show us
and
again
John
so that
James.
we can see.
Can you see the
There we go.
lighting?
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
see it now. Mm-hmm.
And it's just
Tell us who it's by.
it's by John James and Russell Friedman.
Okay.
Russell Friedman passed away last year.
Okay.
But John James, I got to meet him last year at the Grief Recovery Conference, and I got his autographed. And this is I do not loan this book. I have to have several loaners because I will not loan my autographed copy. But he's just amazing in giving this gift to the world, and has just been iterating it over the years and helping millions of people.
Yeah.
And it's awesome because his son is now his son took over and is involved and is the executive director, and it's just an amazing gift to people.
Absolutely. So if a client hasn't been diagnosed correctly, and with a personal, I'm sorry, if a client hasn't diagnosed correctly with a if a client hasn't been diagnosed correctly with a personality disorder and an individual is requesting your services, what is a clear sign that you would need to refer?
So I personally work, only within the grief recovery space.
Okay.
And so I'm
explain that space for us so we can understand.
Yeah. So grief recovery is usually when people think about grief, they think of bereavement or divorce. Those are kind of the two biggest losses. But, the grief spans way more. Pet loss is a big one.
Yes.
A huge one. Loss of trust, loss of faith of body. Other ones, like empty nest, retirement's a huge one, a new job, even positive, miscarriage, IVF, child loss,
chronic pain, it could be anything.
And
loss of your
health. Exactly. And so grief is actually very, there's a lot of grief in our life, and sometimes we don't even recognize when there's a grief. Like, happy occasions, moving into that dream home, because grief really is any change in a pattern.
Absolutely.
Normal reaction. Exactly.
Yeah.
Empty nest is a big one when children, go off to college, which it's amazing. They're getting their education, but it's an empty nest.
Yes. Yes. I've had to go through that when my daughter left to go to the military. She was the first one to leave. So I was like, oh my gosh, you don't understand now. Well, I didn't understand now how to cook smaller or buy less at the grocery store as my family, the kids kept growing and, moving out. And I still, for a while, was still buying all this food just because, trying to make that shift, as you
Exactly.
say. Yeah.
Exactly. So it covers a lot, breakups and new jobs, job loss, financial changes, both positive and negative. So there's a lot, or terminal illnesses, going through a terminal, a caregiver who is caring for a loved one in a terminal illness. That's a huge form of grief, because people ask me a lot, well, I have a loved one that's terminal. Is it too early to start working on it? It's never too early. But on that same note, it's never too late.
Absolutely.
It's never too late to do your work. My dad's, his 12-year anniversary is coming up, and I still do work.
Okay.
I still do work, especially now that I work with grieving clients. Every so often there are triggers, and I'm like, okay, like,
so, and we can't just, I think because they, sometimes because they're going through their grief and trying to process it, and they may be triggered, that doesn't mean that you have to refer services immediately. It's automatically you would know there's a nudge or there's an unction that that I need to refer, or even though you're in your parameters of what how you treat clients, or how you not treat them, but how your program is structured to assist them. But if there was something to come up as a red flag, how would you, as a specialist, refer? Or do you have a list of clients? Just talk to us about, because there's a mental health aspect in it, and where we are, it's not that we're we're the first to call when there's an emergency, but being a coach or being a specialist under the grief recovery method, and even having the advanced certification, I wonder for individuals that don't know where they are in their grief, and then there's this maybe could be mental health thing. How do we work with the client that we don't understand that? What do you do?
Yeah, it's very important to have a network of professionals that you trust and can refer to.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky that, I am affiliated with organizations that I trust that have psychiatrists and therapists, and I've been meeting therapists and networking with therapists and psychiatrists so that I have people that I trust, that I know that I can refer someone to.
Absolutely.
Because I'm a firm believer we all have our expertise and our specialty, and when something is outside of the realm of our expertise, so personality disorder, like you brought up, is outside the realm of my expertise.
Yeah.
Which is why I would 100% refer them to a psychiatrist. And I get inquiries a lot, and sometimes I just know that what they really need is outside of my scope, so I won't even start seeing them. I'll right away give them resources for them, because it's better for them. And once they have a release, a release form, from working with a psychiatrist, then I can work with them.
Absolutely.
But I
wanted to definitely talk about this because, there's also talk around grief coaches and grief recovery specialists that, it's on a borderline. Even when you try to get insurance, sometimes it's kind of borderline trying to figure out where we fit in the scope, along with licensed professional. But with you and I and what you've accomplished and the grief work that you do, we are out here. That's what I just want to, let the world know. We are out here too, helping people just as much as we can. No, it's not to say we can turn anybody away. We have the tools, like you said, and the references to be able to refer. And I'm just thankful that you're another reference, because we have to meet people where they are. And when they're guided to come to you, and now, you've built your client base, it's just good to know that I can even say, well, I don't work in the parameters of what grief recovery method is, but I can refer you to someone. It's just so good building these relationships. And I'm just so glad that I met you.
Likewise. and I think it's really important also, and something that I get asked all the time is, what's the difference between a therapist, and a grief recovery specialist? And I love to ask that question, because I love when people ask that, because I think it's very important for people to understand what a grief coach, what a grief recovery specialist, and what a therapist is.
Absolutely.
And everything has its place. But there are grief coaches and grief recovery specialists, and I speak for myself. But, my training and my background is very specifically in grief recovery.
Yes.
So, anxiety disorders, other depression, and not to be mistaken with sadness due to grief, different things, and personality disorders is outside of my scope, because I am not a therapist. As a grief recovery specialist, we're really educators.
Absolutely.
We're educators and teachers. And I also am a grief coach as well, which, because not everyone, there's no one size fit all for grief. We have to meet grievers where they are, of course.
Absolutely.
And so just really being very, clear on, grief coaching and grief recovery is there are action steps.
Yes.
Not passive.
Yeah.
And therapy is very different.
Yeah.
So just for people to know that. And, and there are some grief recovery specialists that are therapists. So for them, they have to choose which hat they're going to wear.
Right.
But it's very important for people to know therapy is different from grief recovery. It may feel like therapy, because you are digging deep and going through all those deeper crevices, but you're also moving forward and releasing.
Absolutely. And I just think at a point where do you think, while an individual is processing grief, say their loved one, no, not necessarily that their loved one passed. How about there's pet loss? Let's talk about that, because there's the stigma about, that's not a family member. And that really truly is, I did lose my loved one if it was a pet. And where along that journey do you think the grief recovery method will be able to assist that person?
That's a great question, because and really the answer is it really depends on the person.
Exactly.
You know, there's no timeline. And that's why I like to stress also that like having a grief coach and a grief recovery specialist, and which is why I offer both, because not everyone is ready for that structure. Some
Absolutely.
people really just need that loving, safe space for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the thought of having, because there's homework assignments with grief recovery method.
Yeah.
And so it really, really depends on the individual. And I love that you brought up pet loss, because I lost my 15-year-old cat who got me through losing my dad. And
Yeah.
so it was very traumatic losing him, because he wasn't a member of the family. He was
Right.
diabetic, so I had to give him shots twice a day, every
Yeah.
day. So I was holding him together with tape, and it is a lot less socially acceptable to
Yeah.
mourn the loss of a pet, but
Mhm.
they are 100% part of the family.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you like them more.
That's the truth.
They are not judgmental, and they always love you. Even my cats always love
Yeah. And
you.
I asked that question just because your passion just behind talking about it, and that's
Yeah.
what people need to see, so that they know the true person that you are. I mean, of course we can look at, read your bio, and we can see everything online, but I want people to really see this face that I've been talking to, and just falling in love with, because you're just so amazing by the things you've done and accomplished, and I'm just so grateful. Tell us about your grief practice and how you're helping grievers in your community.
Thank you. So in October, so only 4 months ago, I left corporate and I founded my company, The Nonlinear Journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've heard me say nonlinear a couple of times. And
Yes.
um, when my dad was sick, he always said to my brothers and I that time is nonlinear and I'll always be with you. And that really just has always stuck with me. And
Wow.
for a while I was like, I don't even know what nonlinear means in a, in a philosophical, like I know what it means, but
Yeah.
but for many years. And so when, I finally was ready to start my practice, I knew right away what I was going to call it, and the nonlinear journey, because life is a nonlinear journey and grief is a nonlinear journey.
Yeah.
And so I'm very grateful. And so I have really two basic components that I serve grievers with. And one is the grief recovery method,
Mm-hmm.
and which is, an 8-week program for working one-on-one with people and working, it's an action-based program, as I said before, and
Yeah.
doing groups and working with, with people in groups through the grief recovery method. And I also do one-to-one grief coaching, which is very, very specialized to where, the griever is and what they need. So no two will ever look the same, because
Yeah.
it's really based on what the person needs.
Yeah.
And my goal is really to just educate people as much as I possibly can and remove that stigma and around, mental health, and just, help give people the vocabulary,
Right.
and the vocabulary of how to ask for the support that they
Mm-hmm.
don't even know that they need, and to give other people the skills and the ideas of what to do to support people, because it
Yeah.
can be very daunting, and sometimes people, rather than make it, be afraid to make a mistake, they don't do anything or say anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so just really trying to help educate people on that, and corporate in the workspace is my next goal, is to really help um, HR managers support grieving employees, because it's lose-lose for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so that's one of my big dreams, is to be able to just really help educate in general about grief, so that people understand what grief is and what isn't, and kind of help sift through a lot of the not so good information out there that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
serve people.
Yeah.
And so that's where I am now, and I have a lot of big plans of ways that I want to reach and serve more people. But also just knowing that I just founded my company, and
Yeah.
just trying to make sure that because I'm in it 100%.
Yeah.
So just phasing out slowly.
Well, I can feel your heart and the passion
Yeah.
behind it. Can you
Thank
share
you.
just one of the tools that you may possibly use with an individual that's grieving, that that you're using in your practice? Just something to leave with my Grief Nation listeners, something that they can do during their process.
Yes. let yourself feel what you're feeling without judgment, without criticism, and without analysis. And whatever it is that you're feeling, because there will be days that you just can't stop crying, and let that be okay, and know that it's okay. And whatever feelings come up, don't try to fix. It's I think a lot of human nature is you want to fix, you want to help, you don't want to feel sad. I mean, it's not particularly fun to feel sad, but just really to feel it and know that it's okay, and know that you're not alone.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So what's next for you? What are you doing?
Well, I'm I'm doing a lot. Just really looking to help as many people as I can. And I just started a group last week, so really grateful to be with people on their journey, and just really trying to get the word out that there is support and you don't have to grieve alone.
Yeah, I had read somewhere that there's this trauma-informed care bill for children, and I did want to just go back and talk about the support around helping teachers, maybe if it's the grief recovery method going into the schools to help teachers. How do you feel about that? It's Bill S.774, Trauma Informed Care for Children and Families Act of 2017. Do you know anything about it? Have you heard about it? And what are your thoughts about it?
So I know a little bit about it, and from what I do know about it, I think it is fantastic and very needed, especially in this day and age where there have been school shootings and there are shootings out there in movie theaters and in concerts. It's very important to not forget it, like to acknowledge it, even when social media is done acknowledging it. Because just because it's no longer blasted on the news does not mean that the impact is not that is not still there. And so I think it's really, really important, and I think it's even more important to be able to help train teachers on how to support children who have gone through all kinds of trauma and who can be even scared to go to school. I was talking to someone the other day who was saying how their child is scared to go to school because there could be an active shooter, and it's a very valid fear. It's a very valid fear. And so I think this bill is a start. I think it's really important that there is education for teachers, and that there is that support for children, because there's too much trauma that's left on not worked through and kind of just brushed aside. And it's
if we could work with them at this time in their life, as they're building up these things, or from that first stage of learning so much, from the first year 0 to 3 to 5 years old, when your brain really kind of ingest everything that you've learned, and you kind of carry that on. And we, as me being a grief coach and you being a grief recovery specialist and a grief coach, I just want people to know that we're out here. We can help. That's, it's just not psychologists that can do this work. We can also help in schools and be able to, create this community of and helping trauma-informed school and being a part of that. And I just need people to understand that just because we have this title as a grief coach, specialist, grief recovery specialist, and a grief coach, we're still just human and wanting to help, and this bill is so important, and there hasn't been a lot of talk about it, but I want to be able to talk about it. I want us to be more informed about it, and try to get into the school system, and have the school board to address it during their agendas, so that we can be a part of this. We're here. We're here to help, but I guess I'm so grateful to have this show, because now we can have an open conversation about topics that are like this, to help deal with grief, and learn and help others learn how to process through. But I'm so excited, and I'm so grateful that you came. I always ask my podcast guests, is there anything in the grief world, or anything that's a part of your world, being a grief recovery specialist, that you would like to see change, or that you're just excited about?
I'm excited that the conversation is being had more and more. I'm so excited for your podcast and how,
Thank you.
You really give, other grief recovery specialists and coaches like me a platform to share our work, and you share your incredible work. And this conversation is just so important because, there's no one size fits all for grief, and sometimes someone who's grieving needs multiple different coaches, multiple different resources. And so to be able to make it more accessible and let people know what's out there, because I think a lot of times people don't know what kind of support is out there.
Yeah.
And they don't have the vocabulary to ask for it. I had many, many years that I didn't have the vocabulary to ask for what I needed, kind of like a child, when they don't have the vocabulary to ask for what they need. It's the same in grief, because we're taught how to acquire things. We're not taught what to do when we lose
absolutely
stuff, and so I'm really happy to see that this conversation is coming up a lot more, and that people are willing to have this conversation right now, because no one is immune from grief. No
absolutely
one. As a human, no one is.
That is so true. So let's recap. You went through your grief journey, and let's talk about where you are, and we're just going to end the show by saying, what you love and how inspirational that you've been to our community. Let's wrap it up for us.
Yeah. So thank you so much. It's a gift to be here with you. You're just a wonderful soul, and it's just been such a pleasure. But I founded the Nonlinear Journey, keeping a promise to my 24-year-old self to be the grief support that I wish I had, and to just be that support to others. And I'm able to do that online and one-on-one and in groups through the grief recovery method. And I also work one-on-one with people who are grieving. And it's just so gratifying to be able to be on that other side and be able to take all of my experiences and give back.
Absolutely. What are your websites, your social media information, so people can reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'm on social media, the Nonlinear Journey, both on Facebook and Instagram. And my website, I right now have a microsite through the Grief Recovery Method, and my logo and my website is in the works, and hopefully will be done in the next month or so.
It will.
And so, but I can be found on the Grief Recovery Method under Ilana-Shapiro-Yahdav. And I can give you the link to put in the link.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Have an amazing story. Thank you for your gift and your journey, and just living it to your best potential, which you're shining. I'm sure your clients are just excited when they get an opportunity to spend time with you and learn from you. Thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being a servant just to us, just giving back to us what is deep within your heart and your spirit, and it just radiates. And I'm just so thankful that I met you. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you so much. And likewise to you. I'm getting all teary-eyed.
I'll be talking to you soon.
Yes, likewise.